Well, now that we're recording, I guess we can get started just so we don't have minutes of silence on the beginning of the recording. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us for our Marketplace Basics training with Nick Kopera, who is our rep from OverDrive. This is part of the trainings that are set forth in the strategic planning and presented by eBuckles. And with that, I will hand it over to Nick. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Tina. So yeah, I'm going to go through kind of a variety of things that you can do in Marketplace, starting with the different types of ways that you can search for content, and then the kind of the lists and the tools that our staff librarians put together to kind of make shopping easier for you. Creating carts, making sure you're saving carts so you can access those later. Different types of reports that we have on the Insights tab. And then a couple of kind of high-level overviews of some of the different automated carts or purchasing tools that you'll have access to as well. And then some basic stuff as far as changing preferences and then finding support through Marketplace as well. So I'm going to share my screen and always kind of use Tina's Advantage account as the example library here. So first thing we're going to do is just a basic search. So if I'm coming into Marketplace for the first time and I'm just starting to create a cart and I know exactly kind of what book I'm looking for, I can do that just by typing in the title or author. If I click on the hyperlink, it's going to take me to the exact kind of match. If I were to just hit enter here, it's going to take me into a little bit broader of a search. So I'm going to click on the hyperlink there. It'll take me to the title details. If there's multiple formats for this particular title, that'll show up here as well. So there's an audiobook and then an ebook version of this title. And if I wanted to add that to a cart, you'll see these buttons here. Clicking the add to main cart would add this title to Tina's June 2024 cart because it's the pinned cart up here. So for our purposes, I'm going to create a new cart and just name it and pin it as the main cart. And then we can kind of continue working with that pinned cart moving forward. So that's just the basic search. So again, author, series, title, you can, if you know kind of more exact what you're looking for, you can utilize that just basic search to start shopping. The advanced search gets a little bit more granular in terms of the amount of fields that you can utilize to start off with. So if I'm looking for a subject here, you know, I can put that in here, and maybe I want to bulk up my YA romance in particular, and for this, I'm just going to take a look at just the OCOU lending model, and maybe I'll put a maximum price of $29.90 in here. And if I click search, I'm going to be taken to probably quite a large list in Marketplace that meets just those criteria. And the next thing we're going to kind of take a look at is using filters once you do a search like this. You can search basically, you can utilize all these advanced search filters from any shopping list in Marketplace by utilizing this left side here. So you'll see all the filters that is placed in the advanced search are present here. If I wanted to remove any of them, I can just click on the little X there. Maybe I just want to take a look at stuff that's not in the collection right now and focus on ebooks and maybe a street date of just this year. You'll see it's going to kind of think a little bit, and then I'll be able to apply those additional filters. So you can see that shrank the list quite a bit down from 13,000 plus all the way down to 600 something. So now I can kind of focus on just those new titles in that kind of specific area that I was looking for. So all of these have the one copy, one user lending model. Some of them are offered in a couple of different lending models you'll see here. So one copy, one user means that one patron can access this title at a time. Otherwise, there's going to be a wait list on that copy. Whereas a metered access title also is able to be accessed by one patron at a time. Otherwise, it's on hold outside of this 100 checkouts metered access lending model. So this one is a little bit different than the other types of metered access in that all 100 checkouts can be used at the same time. And then do note that when you do purchase one of those titles or one of those copies, it will be shared with the rest of the group. So those 100 checkouts would be able to be used by every library within Buckles. Whereas most of the other metered access titles are going to be by time or checkout. So those are going to look a little bit different here. They're typically 12 or 24 months. So this is 24 months. You can have kind of a choice from time to time, depending on the publisher. So if I do have a choice here, in order to add that to my main cart, I do have to click on one of those options. And then you're going to see 26 checkouts from HarperCollins and HMH pretty much exclusively. And so if I'm shopping in this cart and let's say maybe I made a mistake and want to start over, or I want to remove something, I can click on that cart and remove anything or edit the quantity in here. Or if I wanted to just remove the cart altogether, which I'm just going to do now to clean up Tina's account here, I can just click on the cart itself and then delete it. So went through creating and pinning carts and using those filters while shopping, a basic and advanced search. So like I mentioned, you can utilize those filters through any kind of shopping list that you find. So if I wanted to say, what's on sale in that YA genre, for instance, this month, this will bring up that list of titles, but there aren't any applied filters right now. So if I wanted to, like I mentioned, just focus on OCOU, maybe I want to make sure that I'm only looking at English, and maybe I do want to look at, romance specifically, like we were doing earlier. Now, if I want to apply those results, those filters will be sticky up top here. And I could remove them if I wanted to adjust this or add additional ones on the left-hand side as well. So again, all these are going to be present in any kind of shopping list that you find over here on the left-hand side. So next thing I'm going to go through is these lists that our librarians put together. So if, I'm kind of pressed for time, or if I'm just looking for a place to start, Marketplace does have a lot of content. So you maybe just kind of want to focus on some things that are popular, new, are missing from the collection, but owned by other libraries. There's a lot of options here, as you can tell, different types of book club picks. New York Times, there's always going to be here on most recent list. So if I want to just look at, what's the latest and greatest on that list, real easy to find every week in here. So those are always be present on this left-hand side. And then I did mention those gaps lists as well. So if I wanted to look at, just what's not in my Advantage account, that is, the top 200 fiction ebooks, I can quickly do those kind of quick searches there as well. So mention the Insights tab, and that's where all of our reports can be found. So if I click on this Insights tab, the landing page is going to give me a little bit of basic information on the collection as a whole. So this summary is not going to be just for my library. It's going to be for the consortium. I can kind of put a format filter on there or a time period change if I wanted to look at, consortium stats real quick, summary level. without using these reports, which I'm about to go through in a second here. The holding section we can use for an item count in your Advantage account or the shared collection or a combination of both. So this end date is set for, example, if I was doing end of year stats at the end of last calendar year for your guys, I know it's fiscal year as well. So if I want to say, what was in the shared collection at the end of last year, that'll give me just that count. Likewise, if I just wanted to see what was in my Advantage collection, I can do that here as well. And this does change. So if I wanted to see this at any kind of point in time on past, I can do that here. This is going to, again, be consortium level data. I'm guessing this waiting period dropped a little bit. I think it was maybe in the low 50s. The last time I looked, we did some hold removal after talking to Dave in the last week or so. So it's kind of nice to see there too. So this is consortium level data again. And these reports on the left-hand side will allow me to look at, things from just my library's perspective if I want to. So starting with the checkouts report, I can get there through that popular reports menu on the left-hand side. It's going to populate this report options menu right away. This menu option will allow me to jump to different reports throughout the Insights tab right from this report here as well. If I want to bring back those report options, I can click on this new report button. The top filter will dictate how the information is presented to you in terms of the results of the report that you're running. So, if I want to look at things branch by branch, or in this case, Marketplace always refers to the patron library as branch. So if I click on, if I run this by branch, and then just for, let's say, the month of April, I can use these calendar features, or I can actually type in these boxes as well. If I wanted to do last, this will give me an option of doing like a last 30, 60, 90 days. Do kind of tend to recommend using specific because there can be some overlap when you do that if you're kind of trying to look at things like a month by month basis. So if I run this way by branch just for the month of April, and I have this filter on, this will show me all checkouts regardless who bought those particular copies. This option will show me checkouts on titles that I own within my Advantage account, but they can be purchased by other libraries if they're the same title. So it could be other copies of those titles that are also owned in my Advantage account. I can still see that bought by information by kind of exporting that data to Excel and filtering down a little bit more. This will show me checkouts by my patrons on titles that I own within my Advantage account, but again, those could be copies of those titles that are purchased by other libraries. So that's why if you want a kind of a full picture of what's being checked out in a given period of time by format, whatever kind of way you're looking at this, you kind of recommend leaving the top one. So if I click update here, because I chose checkouts by branch, this is going to have that breakdown again, branch by branch. Now, if I wanted to say, maybe I just want the one whole number, I can do checkouts by month and then hit update. And again, that's just going to calculate and give me one whole number. So if I wanted to, for instance, look at the consortium checkouts for the entire month of April, if I drill into this hyperlink, it will show me all 138,000 plus checkouts. And then I can create a worksheet here, and I'm going to see all of these fields on that Excel file and can kind of manipulate that if I need to further. So there's a lot of ways that I can kind of utilize these filters. If I'm just wanting to limit to, maybe my branch, I can, and maybe I'm looking at, just a specific format for that month, I can really kind of dictate how this data is going to be presented to me utilizing those report options again. So just that month, because I did it checkouts by month, but this is only Glenridge ebook checkouts, no matter who purchased the copies. And then the nice thing that our marketplace team recently did in the report filters is this reset all filters button in the left-hand side. So if I click on this, it's going to kind of revert to the default, which is checkouts by branch for the last 30 days. And then again, if I wanted to, enter specific dates, I can do that here, and I can still kind of change the way that this is presented to me there. So a nice update in the last month or so. So we're going to jump to the current holds report next. And this will always default to the last filters that you run this for. So we're looking at just Glenridge holds with the filters that Tina has on here. Hold has to be active, so no suspended holds, and then it would be an available for sale title. So if I hit update here, it's going to show me the number of patrons I have on hold by format. This is just going to be my patron data. The current average waiting period always does just reflect the consortium as a whole. However, if I do have that branch filter, this will be unique to my library patrons. So if I have that branch filter on, these numbers here for all holds and advantage holds are always going to be the same. So you'll notice all of these are hyperlinked. If I do click on any of these titles, it's going to take me to the title details page. And if I wanted to see my patron holds as well as everyone else, the consortium or shared collection holds, I can remove this filter. It's going to say all branches here, and then hit update. And now I'll still have that picture of my holds versus the consortium holds. And, then maybe I can see, what's popular both at my library and the consortium as a whole, for instance. So you can see the amount of holds here. And then if I click on one of these, again, that's a hyperlink, and then it'll show me branch by branch in terms of barcode as well as the patron library. And then again, if I run this report and then, maybe I wanted to reset the filters there, I have that option here. And then if I wanted to look at Glenridge again, I can just do that. So you notice this number shrinks quite a bit when I put that branch filter in. So let's say I've made a few purchases in Marketplace, and I want to go back through and look at the titles that I've ordered. I can run the purchase orders report, and this is again going to default to the last 30 days. So maybe I want to see full 2024 so far. This is defaulting to all billing accounts right now, but maybe I want to see what the shared collection has purchased so far this year. So it'll give me a running total for all of these purchase orders based on the time period that I selected in the billing account, as well as the amount of copies within those orders. And then all of these are hyperlinked. So either one of these is going to take me into the details of that particular order. Again, hyperlinked as well, so that it would take me right to the title details page. So if I look at, the overall ownership of this title, for instance, you can see that this one's only owned by one. There's one copy owned by the shared collection. There aren't any owned in Tina's Advantage collection. So if I'm in my Advantage account here, this Advantage line is always going to indicate just my library information here. Advantage Plus would be the total amount of shared copies from other libraries. It'll also include any of my Advantage copies based on the sharing rules at Buckles. So again, that's purchase orders report. So all these are hyperlinked. I can export this again if I wanted to. I want to change the filters here. I can reset them. Different billing accounts there. So next thing we were going to take a look at was purchasing tools. They used to be called automated carts. Most of them do have the option to still create an automatic cart if you'd like to. So So we have a few different ones. Newest is the metered access manager. So holds manager is probably the most commonly used. So if I click on this one, it'll show me any plans that are currently set up for Tina's library. If I wanted to create a new plan, I can click that create new plan option. So I can set this up based on the holds ratio, which basically means the number of copies versus the number of holds that are owned. Or excuse me, number of copies owned versus the number of holds on that particular title. Or I can set this up to add a title to a cart when a number of holds is hit there. I can set this up by format. So if I wanted to run two different plans based on ebook and audiobook, I can eliminate suspended holds, holds that were already delivered to a patron but maybe not checked out. I can exclude or include weeded titles, limit by lending model, publisher, language, subject, and this exclusion of branches will indicate whom the hold was placed by. So if I wanted to, for instance, look at only my holds, I can exclude everyone and then maybe just include Glenridge, for example. So this would look at the criteria that I have set up here, but based on only my patron holds. I can exclude or include pre-order titles. And then, so again, most of these have the option to create a cart. So if I choose no here and save this, it'll just be a report that I can run based on that criteria that I set up. If I choose yes, this is going to create carts based on the additional filters that I set up here. So the kind of cadence that I want those carts created at, if I want a dollar limit or copy limit, for example. So a lot of ways that you kind of automate purchasing based on holds and other things here. So purchasing tools also has metered access manager. So, if you're starting off, you may not have, many expiring metered access titles quite yet, but, a year or two, like we saw, 12 months, 24 months, depending on what you're purchasing, things like that will start to expire. So everyone has this automatic plan set up in their Advantage account. And this will just generate a cart, or excuse me, generate a report if I click on it based on the criteria that we see here. So it has to be expiring in 30 days or fewer, or have 5 checkouts or less. So Tina doesn't currently have anything in her Advantage account based on that. But if I wanted to just set this up, myself, for example, I can create a new plan. And then, let's say maybe I want one for just checkouts. I can just do metered by checkout. So if I'm going to be buying a lot of HarperCollins and HMH titles, maybe I just want to look at those individually. And I have the ability to change this. Maybe I want to look at 3 instead of 5, for example. Have a lot of these same filters options that we saw on the holds manager. So audience level by format, if you want to include weeded titles, pre-orders. And then the nice thing about this one is it does give you that option of the limiting by an active amount of holds or maximum or minimum amount of checkouts in the last 12 months or all time for that particular title. So a lot of ways that you can limit this. And again, this does have that option to generate a card if you want to. If you don't, it'll just show up here as a report that you can click on and run. So if there were any titles that met that criteria, that would show up in this plan here. Nice thing about the meter access manager and the other purchasing tool report options is that we do have an added CPC price as well. So cost per cert. If that particular title is offered in that lending model, it will show up in here. So, for example, if maybe you don't think you want to purchase the same title again in this metered access lending model, but you want to satisfy a couple of holds using that CPC lending model, you could see that price right from the report results here. I think CPC is something that Tina goes over in a separate training, if you're not familiar with that lending model. So purchasing tools, I think Patron interest. Smart List is kind of getting phased out by these other ones, especially now that the Mirrored Access Manager is in place, but so I won't go over that one. But Patron Interest Manager is nice if you're looking at the notify me tags that your patrons are placing in titles. So Tina has this set up to look at anything that has 3 or more notify me tags, doesn't matter the format. It does exclude anything that is a pre-order, and it's going to generate a cart for her every 2 months. So if I run this by clicking on that report title, if there was anything that met those criteria, I could see that here. I can also see some basic notify me data on the insights tab here. So this patron interest section also will allow me to see notify me data. If this is defaulting to listening campaigns, which refers to the curated lists that you'll see on Libby, I can change that here. So if I just run this for last 60 days and click update, this will give me kind of a high level overview of what's being tagged. So a lot of this is probably going to be, pre-order titles that, are likely going to be purchased, maybe a little bit closer to when they come out, etc. So this will allow me to kind of see, again, high level data for notify me tags. If I wanted to just look at my branch, I can do that via this advantage account filter here as well. So you'll see all the libraries listed there, and that will just show me the tags that are coming from my patrons. The view details section will give you a little bit more data in terms of the author language format here. The Patron Interest Manager purchasing tool does give you a lot more information. If there's titles that meet that criteria that you have set up in the report. So we do kind of recommend, if you're looking, at running a report based on notify me tags, that you set up the Patron Interest Manager. So you'll see that here on the purchasing tools, and then the Patron Interest Manager will have a link down here as well under the save searches as well. So I can set up a save search from advanced search. Forgot to mention that earlier. So if I know I'm going to be doing the same search over and over again, so let's say maybe I want to look at titles that are on hold for my patrons, for example, and maybe I'm a selector that is only so if I'm, maybe a selector that's just looking at YA, for example, and JV, I can put an audience filter on here as well. And I have this option to save. So that'll just, if I click save here, it'll give me that option to name the search, and then that would again kind of end up on the save search menu over here. So kind of a nice, again, way to make shopping a little bit more efficient for you. So a couple more kind of basic things that you can do in terms of marketplace. So maybe you want to change some settings. So the settings menu up here will keep track of any content credit that I have on file. If I do have CPC budget set up for those cost per search titles I mentioned, Tina does a different training on, that will show up here as well. What I wanted to kind of show you here is you can change your contact information as far as your email address, where the marketplace notifications are going, and then also email preferences, and then search preferences. So really common, what I've seen here is a language filter. So if you wanted to only see English, you could do that there, and then choose the language. And then this will also give you the option, this will go back, to change your email preferences. So if I don't want to see emails based on all of these things that are happening within Marketplace, I can edit, tailor which ones are actually going to make it to my inbox. So I mentioned where to get support as well. So you'll see the support tab here. So this will have my contact information, both email and phone. You have a digital content librarian on staff that works with me as well. So she is great at generating carts for you. So if maybe you don't have time, in a given month or something like that, and you'd like a cart created for something specific, you can always feel free to reach out to her. She's happy to just kind of place that in your account or make the purchase on your behalf, whatever you need. You can also reach out to her if you have like kind of content questions. So if you see something funny in Marketplace, maybe something's not right with the title in terms of an audiobook, maybe the file happens to be corrupt or something like that, she can enter a content case as well for things like that. Bart is more of your guy for technical aspects of the site. So anything kind of related to sign in, you can start with him. So authentication, mark records, changing ILS server changes, things like that. If you have things like that, he can always assist. Authentication support in terms of ticket type is definitely kind of going to be your go-to if you have any of those types of changes happening. Do kind of recommend doing that as much in advance as possible, especially if you have like a large thing happening like a server or ILS change. That team can kind of assist you along the way and make sure that we have everything that we need to minimize any kind of disruption for sign-in with patrons. Invoicing support is going to be any kind of issues you have with billing invoices, if you need a statement, if you need content credit moved from one account to another, maybe that type of thing you'll find in this ticket type. Technical support is going to be anything patron related. So if you have like things that you're trying to troubleshoot within Libby, you can always enter a technical support ticket. There will be options to enter their barcode, the title that's presenting the problem, things of that nature. There is also in-app help within Libby, so always kind of recommend steering patrons in that direction if you can. So they can do that from the settings menu and communicate directly with our support team in that manner as well. You'll find all of our help websites here in terms of the different products. So Libby, OverDrive, can help you if you have that, as well as Marketplace help here. Resource Center, I think, is a wonderful tool. Always kind of recommend bookmarking resources.overdrive.com. You can access this site without logging into Marketplace, so you don't necessarily have to be signed in here to utilize any of the tools. So if I click on the library menu, I'm going to find a few different areas of this site. So if I'm a selector and I'm looking for shopping ideas, Alicia's team has created this kind of repository for all of those wonderful lists that you see on the left-hand side in Marketplace, and as well as more. So if I'm looking for, maybe some diverse reading, there's all kinds of additional lists that you may not find on that left-hand side there. Tons and tons of different lists that they've created over time. Real likes, this is really nice if you're kind of doing programming around a popular title, or you're somebody that likes to curate lists and you want things that are again kind of associated with maybe one of these popular titles or authors. Lots and lots of lists again in pretty much all of these categories. So seasonal, bestsellers, pretty much anything you can think of there. So really nice area here for collection development, shopping, and these will all take you right into failed to mention Marketplace. So if I'm signed in and I want to look at just the latest and greatest monthly audiobooks, this will give me that list, and it's telling me it's been updated in the last week or so. So really nice area of Marketplace there. Marketing and outreach is a nice tool, again, if you're kind of getting started out promoting Libby with patrons, or you want to do more of that. You'll be able to find social graphics, website graphics you can utilize for linking to the Buckles website or Libby Buckles and Libby website. Print ready materials, so if you have that capability in-house, you can do that there. templates are going to be here. We did migrate Canopy resources to the resource center as well. If you're looking for us to send you physical materials, you do have that option here from this link that says public library requests. And this has been combined to include Canopy marketing materials too. So if you're one of those libraries that has both, kind of nice that you can do that here in the same place. And then training videos and webinars are always stored here on the training section. So upcoming webinars, you can always register for. They'll usually be going a couple months in advance. And then the last few webinars that we've had will be recorded and listed here. So kind of a basic getting started Libby webinar for patrons or patron facing staff. Kind of nice one right there. And those are usually done every few months. How-to resources are going to be more specific for the different areas of marketplace, and then Libby and OverDrive as well. You'll see here. So tons and tons, anything that you can kind of think of as far as marketplace goes, and then Libby as well. So nice if you need to, link things. A lot of these will have options to embed the video on your site. Nice options there. So, and for patron videos, share. So nice options for training, either patrons or staff again. That's all I had. Was there anything else that you wanted me to cover, Tina, Darlene, or any kind of questions?
Did you cover weeding at all? I couldn't remember.
I didn't. I don't know if I
Last time
did.
I was like,
I don't know if that was part of the advanced training last time or not. This was the list that I had from last year for basic. I can if you'd like.
Can you give a 2-second notice of what weeding is?
Absolutely, absolutely. So very similar to what you'd probably expect in the physical space. If you weed a title, you're weeding your copy. That did kind of change in the last couple of years, which is nice copy level weeding. So this admin menu, if you have access, will have this weeding tool option. We have set up a automatic weeding plan in a similar fashion to this for all Advantage libraries by default. But these are the criteria that we kind of recommend that you change it to. And that is going to weed anything that's expired in terms of those metered access lending models we saw while shopping. But the titles have to have no holds. So like we saw in that metered access manager, that's kind of the intention, is to kind of look at those titles that are nearing expiration, and then determining whether or not you want to repurchase them, add them in CPC maybe, or just remove the holds and weed them. If you don't remove holds on a weeded title that is still for sale, it will count towards the current average waiting period. So just keep that in mind. If when you're weeding, if you do have holds on metered access titles, if you know that you're gonna not repurchase those and weed those copies, just make sure that you remove the holds. Tina, is that still something that the committee does exclusively, or can they do that themselves? I always forget that.
The Advantage Plus people can weed their own titles.
Removing holds though?
Oh, I don't know. I think that technically you have the ability to do it. I don't know whether it's an encouraged experience, however.
Yeah, I think I would recommend utilizing this manage holds tool in only that situation, to remove holds on titles that you're not going to repurchase, because there's no notice sent to patrons or anything. There's no kind of automated email that gets sent when you do use this tool. You can kind of search by title and then remove holds for just your patrons using this tool. But again, that's something that I would only do if you're going to be not repurchasing a metered access title and weeding it.
And we had a question in the chat where a patron asked what it means when it says under their holds items that they are on hold in 2 lanes.
Oh, that's a great question. So I don't have any holds, but I know what that's talking about. So we made an update to the verbiage that patrons see for Advantage Plus specifically, which Buckles is. So everything that you guys purchase on Advantage gets shared with the other libraries. So it's kind of a giant pool of content that the patrons have access to, but there is still that Advantage priority on your Advantage copies. So that's why there's those lanes there. So if there are copies purchased by your home library, the intent there is to kind of communicate to the patron that wait time can vary based on the amount of copies owned by your home library.
So if they're on hold in 2 lanes, it means they're on hold for an Advantage copy and for the consortial copy.
Correct, yeah. So Libby's always going to give the soonest available copy to the next patron in line, regardless of who purchased that copy. However, that the Advantage patrons will still be kind of at the top of the list for their Advantage copies. So for instance, a shared copy from the shared collection could come available first before my home library's copy does. So that's where that kind of 2-lane verbiage comes in play. Good question.
If anybody has any other questions, please put them in the chat. And Darlene, do you want to do your friendly neighborhood updates?
Hi, everyone. While you're thinking of your questions, I'll just do a couple of housekeeping items. First, we would like to thank Nick from OverDrive for another great class packed with a lot of good information. Also, thanks to Tina Marie Duty, Director at Glenridge, and E. Buckles committee member for helping to arrange the training. We will be sending you an evaluation form just to get your feedback on this class and what future training you would like to see. Nick recorded the session for us, so we will also be sharing the recording. And I think that's it. As Tina had mentioned earlier, this is part of Buckles training for centralized training for mandated services according to the strategic plan. The mandated services include the ILS, e-content, and delivery. So we are offering these classes during the year. We have some other classes coming up. As Nick mentioned, Tina will be doing the cost per circ training. And then there's also a curation training. I did send an email out this morning about webinars that OverDrive offers to all of their clients. And there are some Libby webinars in May and August. So please feel free to sign up for those, and we'll keep you posted on additional Buckles training.
There was one more question in the chat. I'd be happy to answer if you wanted to. If you wanted me to.
Yep, absolutely. And now back to you, Nick.
Can you guys see my Libby screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I can actually show you what I was talking about with the author notify me tag, Tina, because that's kind of the question that came in from Jenny Z, it looks like. So is there a way for patrons to request ebooks that aren't currently owned by Buckles? So I was looking for the ebook version of this to read on my upcoming vacation next week, and didn't see it owned here. So when I search in here for this particular author, it's going to show me results from any of my libraries. So you notice kind of 2 different library cards here. This is going to be my county library card, whereas this is my city library card. And it will show me that deep searching is available in the list, and the filters of the list. So in order to expand the search results here and see titles that aren't currently owned by any of my libraries, so because Libby is a multi-library app, it will show me titles owned by any of those libraries. But in order to expand that, I do have to turn this deep search on. This is getting moved up in a upcoming update as well. I don't really love how deep this is within the filters here, but that is getting updated pretty soon. So you notice this 52 titles is a lot more by Mr. Tom Coyne. And I placed a notify me tag on this title earlier today. So because I have this notify me tag on, any of my libraries can see that within Marketplace, within that patron interest manager report. And while shopping, it'll be present on the title details as well. so that's going to be within, you know, in my library's case, that would be in that Cleveland City Library, and then also my county library system will see this notify me tag. And as a patron, if either of those libraries were to purchase this particular title, I will be notified. So that's kind of the current iteration of, you know, how a patron would recommend that a title gets purchased to their library. So we're kind of more so allowing the patron to be notified if the title is purchased, and there's kind of clear verbiage around, you know, the library, you know, may not actually purchase the title when I enter this notify me tag. And then this is a smart tag. So because I like this author, if I look at my tags, this tag is going to be listed as a smart tag. So because this particular notify me tag has smarts on it, any of these authors that I have in here, if my libraries purchase any titles by those particular authors, I will be notified. So this particular tag does have smarts. Not all tags are going to have smarts, so you can see some of these tags that I have are just my subscription tags for magazines. Or excuse me, the subscription tags have subscribe. And then some of my more, you know, categorized tags aren't smart tags. And then these two have smarts, borrowed, wished list. So in order for me to get that author or author subscription, so to speak, the notify me tag does have to have smarts on it. I'll still send you a little overview of that too.
Thank you. And just a reminder to everybody that this is different from the old recommend title. It does not automatically put the title on hold.
Correct.
Once the patron gets notified that the item has been purchased, then they have to go and put the title on hold. It gives them takes them directly there when they click on the notification or the email, but there is an additional step for the patron, whereas previously with a recommend to library, it would automatically put them on hold for the patron. And we can't have nice things because people figured out how to work around that.
And that,
get a zillion things on hold at one time.
yeah, and you know, patrons are still probably going to, you know, utilize this feature to be notified when a pre-order title is purchased, as you could see by, you know, a lot of those pre-orders being pretty heavily tagged in that patron interest manager dashboard. So that's why we did kind of put that filter in there. I think Tina even had it on where, you know, she's not even looking at any of those tags that correspond to pre-orders. So you're kind of narrowing it down to maybe a little bit more of the quirkier stuff that patrons may be wanting to read in there by doing that. And then as a patron on the settings menu here, if I go to settings, manage notifications, I have kind of a lot of options to change here as far as those tags go. So I like everything to be a menu badge within the app. So with any of those notify me tags, that's where that notifications can appear. But if I wanted to add email, I could do that here as well.
And we got another question, and I'm
Sure.
curious about this. I think I know the answer, but recently we started seeing the message, this title is owned by another library with special settings for interlibrary sharing. As a result, you can't borrow it right now, but you can place it on hold.
Good question too. So that means that another library has cost per circ on for that particular title. We did just create an update that should be rolling out to your group actually pretty soon. That will kind of eliminate that messaging and instead just show the title as only being able to be placed on hold. So that's kind of a bug, so to speak, or feature of Advantage Plus sharing and CPC that's kind of created some issues in the past. So if, for example, if in the past where one library owned a CPC copy of a title, other libraries within the group would see that title as available, but then go and only be able to place a hold. So that verbiage was recently added to kind of help alleviate the confusion on the patron end. But again, that's very close to being fixed altogether.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
Good questions. And a lot of this notify me tag stuff is probably going to be covered in that Libby training that Darlene mentioned.
And like we've talked about, I do a cost per circ training where we talk about what cost per circ is, how to use some different ways to use it to manage your holds, how to set budgets, all of that sort of fun stuff for cost per circ. All right, Darlene, do you have any last guiding words for us before we let Nick go?
The only thing, Tina, since we were talking about upcoming training, could you just give a quick overview of this curation training that's coming up in June?
Sure. So the curation training is done by Alicia from OverDrive. She's our librarian. Nick, what's her title again?
Digital content librarian. They just switched that title, so
I
yes.
can never remember the title. I also am very proud of myself that I remember her name now, because we've had, in my tenure, I've had like 4 of these people and I always am one person behind. So I now remember, now, as soon as I said that, now it's not going to be Alicia anymore, but right now it's Alicia. Curation is speaking about the list that you see on Libby. So when you log into Libby or your OverDrive, you'll see sort of the themed carousels of titles. Like Spring Into a Great Read or some of the other different options. And we have the OverDrive Advantage libraries have the ability to customize these lists for ourselves. And Alicia is going to teach us how to do that and also just tell us a little bit more about curation and how it all works. I use it at Glen Ridge for summer reading, and I realized that a lot of people didn't know that they had the ability to customize their own lists. So that is why we were doing the training. And Alicia is going to do it for us because she knows way more about how to do it than I do.
Yeah, Alicia's great. She was a librarian here in the Akron, Ohio area for quite some time. So yeah, looking forward to that one too.
Awesome. Well, on that note, if there's no other questions, thank you so much, Nick, and we will see you soon. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks,
Take care.
everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Tina Marie.